Makes me want to get like a human-shaped cake for us.
Please no. Hey YouTube, welcome back to our channel. My name is Elena.
And I'm Bjorn.
And we are Viking Age reenactors and living historians here to talk with you about your favorite Viking shows.
What's to say? We're halfway through the show.
I don't like that.
I know, right? Quality versus quantity, I guess.
Yeah.
But still. Anyways, we are on episode 3 of season 0 of Norsemen. Delighted with the show so far. We're about to do the wedding episode. Without further ado.
I won't say a word to Jarlvik, for my name isn't Vikings the Treacherous.
That name doesn't exactly inspire confidence.
It's the honest ones you can't trust, honestly.
First off, building off of what we were talking about when it came to being called basically after your hairstyle. Fair hair, tangle hair, all of that stuff. That also went beyond your looks.
There are a lot of physical qualities to by names and things, like you mentioned. Like the fair hair one is kind of both, because not only does it talk about like his beautiful Harold's beautiful hair, but it also shows that he kept his word, and that, you know, it's almost like just praising him for like his glorious like follow through, essentially. Mm-hmm. So that fair hair kind of became like idealistic of like his deeds by uniting Norway, which is a glorious thing beyond just his physicalness. But I mean, there was also like Stick a Snake in the Eye, where he was born with the weird deformity, and they kind of had an association of like magic and stuff kind of imbued with it. There's Bjorn Ironside, who got the name because he went to battle and was like never wounded at all. So they were like, dude must be made of iron. Like, no idea how he like doesn't even bleed in battle. This is amazing. I think there was one, I can't remember the guy's name, but like his by name was like Jarnfoot, which is like Ironfoot, essentially. Just like Bjorn's would be Jarnsidre, Ironside. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, all these names are like you get your name based on what you do, like the deeds that you do. So like the idea that he's trying to like spin this around and make it like, oh, it's an ironic name. It's like, no, no.
That's not how it works. But I feel like that's also how it would go, and you can tell, you know, Jarl Bjorn here is like, I don't think you're right. I don't think that's how this works.
I love his hair. I love how it's just bangs, too.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing beyond bangs. It's the weirdest little, like, fringe of, I don't even know. Viking hairstyles, man. This is like a very more extreme Norman crop. It's like he took it a little bit too far.
I swear, on my honor.
So obviously he has no honor to swear by, which is the whole point of that. But really quickly, to kind of develop this whole little meeting thing. So Jarl Bjorn has collected some men of note, I guess, you know, leaders of the areas, to kind of bring them into this plot to lead a mass scale attack on Jarlavari, which is fine. But we do have mention of this kind of often in the sagas, all throughout the Icelander sagas, and kind of highly of note, that kind of comes to my mind, is in the saga of Burnt Njal, in Brennu Njal saga. I mean, that happened constantly. The whole story is just filled with these two families just constantly kind of like fighting back and forth, with Njal and like his counterpart best friend just like constantly kind of paying each other the same amount of money back and forth every other year to like pay each other off in compensation for all the misdeeds that the rest of their family does. But it many times kind of bubbles over, and you get these little secretive meetings that take place, where, you know, you meet it in a hillside with you know, your most trusted sworn to friends, essentially, and you plot there, and the whole idea of just kind of keeping it under wraps and making sure that nobody sees where you come from or nobody sees who you leave with and things. It happened quite frequently in the sagas. Mm-hmm. It's just really cool to start to see it come into play with the story here.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I thought we should have a refresher course in here.
But maybe then you can start with me and then I'll penetrate you afterwards.
What? No, not at all. No, nothing like that.
No, I know, because that would be very shop. Yes.
They're about to have
The talk.
The talk. And Orm thought it was going to be more than just a talk. Wow.
Oh my goodness.
So I guess to talk quickly about homosexuality in the Viking Age, since Orm is just a delightful character to broach this topic with. I mean, we don't have too much information in terms of how much homosexuality kind of existed in the Viking Age. We do know that there were very specific societal norms and societal taboos, so we know what was right and what was not. And we know that it was very important for a man to behave like a man and for a woman to behave like a woman. If they strayed from those social taboos, they could be ostracized, they could be fined, they could be penalized, they could get divorced, and they could pretty much be kind of like shunned in society. Now that being said, there are some later age laws about homosexuality that says it's one of the most demoralizing, inhumane, unmanly things that you can do. There's also a few words that we know that are Old Norse slurs and insults. So if you called a man any of these kind of like 3 words, it would basically be grounds to duel to the death, to fight over your honor, because it would be considered very dishonorable to let a slight like that go. You know, words more important then. But the reason I bring it up is because these words do kind of hyper-focus around homosexuality or unmasculine sex, essentially. Now, that being said, these laws seem to come into play and kind of emerge in society after the onset of Christianity. So it is believed that this concept of homosexuality being so incredibly wrong really only arose after Christian values started to emerge and kind of permeate through society. Now, that being said, being a Dark Age culture, you know, just for the sheer progression of your family lines and things, it was kind of expected of a man to get married to a woman, to have children, and to further extend his bloodline and to increase the value and strength of their family and everything like that. However, we do have reason to believe, based on earlier stipulations, and kind of like key mentions of the sagas and things, that there was an idea of masculine love. And especially with these slur words and things, they seem to have a very defined focus on passive sexuality. So if you were kind of on the receiving end of the sex making, that was seen as an unmasculine thing. Now, with that being said, it makes no mention of the giving end.
Hence, what was it, season 1?
Yep. Hence,
There was a scene where he was like, I was very active. It was not a passive thing.
Exactly. Exactly. And then, hence the whole reaction in season 1 where they kind of call him on having sex with the guy, and he's like, oh, well, you know, I was thrusting back at him, so it was really, you could really say that I was raping him. And that's where that mentality kind of comes into play, and that's what I love about the show, because they do point to it without just like explaining it to you and holding your hand through it all. Mm-hmm. But it is an important distinction to make, because you know that kind of implies the existence that homosexuality was it not only existed, like we know definitively that it existed because of these specifics in terms of the engagement, but also that it was kind of at least partially accepted. It creates that whole idea that homosexuality is still perfectly fine as long as you are in a like powerful stance in it, essentially.
Like you're still the man of the
yeah, exactly. Like, you know, you might be having gay sex, but at least you're like in control of it, you know?
And that's how you produce a phantom orgasm.
Oh my god.
More advanced materials.
I feel like it's only really weird because it's like his brother. But also, again, Vikings were kind of like not shy about sex. And just about things like that. Like we know in the stories, like we know that they had slaves, we know that they had sex slaves. And in certain sagas in the Icelanders, we actually see these or read these depictions where they'll be gathered at their booths and they'll purchase slaves kind of as they go through meeting with everybody, and like they'll just openly have sex with this person in their hut with everybody else around.
Like it wasn't a big deal.
And that's it, yeah. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a big deal. So like this wouldn't even be necessarily that inaccurate. Like we don't know how often that was kind of portrayed, but we do get this instance from the sagas that, I mean, they did kind of have this more open public approach to sex, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, in that respect, like, the kids growing up around their parents would probably, like, witness some of that going on as well.
Season 1, episode 1 of Vikings.
Yep.
Where are your parents? They're inside having sex. Well, we'll just wait here.
Now you're gonna be one of my closest warriors. So you're gonna need a little equipment. Here's the latest in sword, axe, and dagger, yeah?
So, Jarls and leaders in general would give weaponry and other gifts to people who followed them. Whether you were a warrior or just a farmer that was loyal to them, they did provide gifts for you.
There's this there's a quote from one of the sagas, which kind of becomes like a Viking saying, I guess. But the translation basically comes down to a gift always looks for a gift in return, and it comes down to that concept where you're sworn your loyalty, and by you swearing your loyalty the first time to your chieftain, to your jarl, he gives you a arm ring to kind of signify that oath, but also to kind of swear on, and also provide you with a level of finance, a level of payment for your honor, for your loyalty to him, and as a product of that, to thank him for the gift, you give him the loyalty, and then to thank you for the loyalty, he continues to give you gifts and things. So
Right.
the more you kind of do for your chieftain, the more you kind of get back in return. So it was that constant kind of concept of a gift always looking for repayment. It doesn't matter if it was, okay, I gave you a thing and now you gave me a thing and now we're done. It was like a constant kind of cycle. And oftentimes jarls and chieftains could use that to their advantage and essentially put a person into like a form of servitude to them forever. We do get mention again in some of the sagas where these kings give these elaborate, ornate, expensive gifts to people, and they have no way to be able to really pay that back in any kind of like realistic way, whether it's just like giving them a boat or like a bunch of gold or like land and titles or something. And so the only way that the person can pay the king back is to just have to stay there in their service for years. And a lot of times in the Icelandic sagas, these Vikings, these journeymen, who are trying to kind of make their way in the world and gain some renown, are often stuck and isolated in Norway or in Ireland because of this bond that they've formed. And it's because they're sworn to that king in his service, and they have to stay there with him. It can be very dicey, tricky territory, and it can get you in a lot of trouble, essentially.
Yeah, and it was kind of seen as maybe not dishonorable, but definitely rude to refuse a gift. So you couldn't,
Absolutely.
if you were given a ship and you couldn't repay something like that, it was still kind of on you to accept that, and then you had to try and make up for that.
Sorry for interrupting, but does anyone feel like getting bloated?
Can we just go democratic and vote on it?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, that's mega fair.
Just talking about democratic
Oh,
processes. I don't know if that's what they would have called it. Granted, we're watching slaves here, but in Viking society, you could say that they had a democratic process because the community itself was involved in, voicing and sort of voting, I suppose, for if people got punished and how they got punished. People were involved in the punishment itself. If it came down to that. So everything was very like community based in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the times it was kind of left to like the local kind of chieftain or something to administer a lot of the law. But that being said, we do know that the Vikings participated in things, or all things. And the thing or all thing was essentially a large assembly that they'd have either seasonally or on an annual basis, where during some the local communities would come together, or the whole region essentially would come at this large thing, an all thing, where they would actually cite their grievances to a council, an elected council of representatives, and those representatives would hear the case, hear both sides, weigh in terms of what was legally binding, and then administer a decision. So there was this pretty strong notion of authoritarianism with just local chieftains and kings kind of presiding over. But we absolutely did have a representative collection of people who kind of were elected or represented the larger area. And based on that, it was kind of like a form of democracy, a little bit more akin to kind of what we have right now. Like, we elect our local officials in America, and then those officials are supposed to vote on things that better us. You know, the Gothi, the law speakers, that title was kind of handed down by family. So it wasn't something that was necessarily elected, but you still had to hold on to the title and be worthy of it. But based on the region, there would be, like a Gothi would kind of preside over a certain number of families. And then those Gothis would make up a quarter. At least this is how it worked in Iceland. Those Gothis would make up a quarter, and then each of the Gothis in each quarter would come together as an Althing. And then they also established a fifth quarter to preside over anything that, you know, the four couldn't really work out. So it is a kind of an interesting kind of tie-in to how we run modern politics with what a lot of people have nowadays. Another thing to note really quickly was just the idea of the bloat. Who wanted to get bloated today? A bloat is not when you eat too much and feel fat and ridiculous like I often do. A bloat back then meant sacrifice, and oftentimes when you had a big feast or some kind of big celebration or ceremony, it would be considered a bloat because there would be like a figure or an animal that would get sacrificed to the gods as part of that ceremony. We do have some idea in terms of how this kind of would go about in weddings and things. We don't know a lot about weddings, but we do know a little bit. One concept that we do know is that it seems that boars or like a pig would be sacrificed for a wedding because the pig was symbolic of Frey, who was a god of fertility and of the crops and the harvest. So it would make sense kind of religiously that a boar symbolizing fertility would be sacrificed on a day for a marriage, you know, when it's supposed to be very fertile and vital and everything.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, so they would have a big pig roast and everything going for
Yeah,
that.
exactly. It doesn't really make too much sense to sacrifice a slave for it. I mean, we don't know a ton about the wedding practices that the Vikings had back in the day, and it's just because a lot wasn't really written down to preserve it, which is kind of a shame. A lot of these things that we kind of take for granted for the day-to-day living, essentially, was exactly that. It was mundane to them, so there was no need for them to kind of write about it and record it because they already knew. You know, when they talk about having a wedding and there was a feast, they didn't need to go into the details because the people there listening to the stories already knew what took place. Unfortunately, 1,000 years later, we don't. But we can kind of pick a little bit of information out of what does exist. So we do know that the feasts, a massive feast was held. You know, it was a big celebration and it was something of great import to the society. It was families joining together. Because of that, it has to be at a time when food was prevalent, which is kind of around the time of the harvest. So it would have been kind of late in the summer when the crops were starting to go and all the food was getting collected and compiled together. That's when they kind of have that ceremony, essentially. It's often depicted in the sagas as being late in the season, you know, X amount of weeks, 8 to 10 weeks or so into the summer, where we're starting to kind of come to an end. Yeah,
and it's probably also around the time when everyone was getting back from their raids and settling back down, so it kind of worked out that way.
Exactly, yeah. Well. Perfectly so. You know, because with the winter kind of starting to come in with the warning signs of that, people would start to migrate back to their homes and try to settle down a bit, and especially if they knew that there was going to be a wedding taking place, they'd want to make sure that they were home for that. We know that the men and the women kind of had a little bit of their own experiences with the rest of the women and the rest of the men to kind of learn about what married life was like before the actual ceremony themselves. They were mostly probably dressed in very plain clothes. We don't know too much about any kind of like elaborate gowns or like rich vestments that they would wear necessarily. The woman's hair would kind of be ceremoniously tied back as a symbol of, you know, being married, being wed. I believe in Norse culture, the idea of the notion of having kind of like your hair down and not tied back was representative of being single. Mm-hmm. And then when you became married or you were betrothed to somebody, you would tie your hair back to kind of symbolize that. There was an exchange of gifts, often a sword. There was a new sword that was presented as well as an old family sword to kind of help symbolize everything in the going forward in the history of the families dating back as well.
The husband would give his bride his old sword for her to pass down to their sons, and then she would give him a new sword to use moving forward. Exactly, yeah.
And there was also a little bit of a concept of kind of carrying the bride through the threshold of their new house, often because kind of prestigious family members would often be buried in the threshold, like beneath the threshold of the home, to kind of protect the house and kind of serve as a warding spirit. And it was very bad luck if the bride were to trip and stumble over the threshold. It was a sign of ill will and ill fate for them. So often the husband would kind of scoop her up and carry her in, and that's kind of where we get the modern day notion of it. As far as I know, I don't really know too many wedding practices or wedding history specifically, but it seems kind of interesting that we still have a little bit of that notion of, carrying the bride through the new threshold of the home.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just cool things that you don't really think about. There was a bloat, there was an animal sacrifice, the blood would be collected, sprinkled over the newlyweds, as we're kind of describing here. Oaths were sworn, toasts to Thor and Odin and Frey and everything. But I mean, beyond that amount, like, we don't know the specific words that were said. We don't know exactly the proceedings. We don't know how long it lasted. It could have lasted days, honestly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of little detail that we don't know, but the overarching story of it is pretty straightforward, I think.
Yeah, and it could also just be that different weddings were conducted differently. You know, like back in the Viking Age, they didn't have Pinterest to look at 100 other weddings before they had theirs.
Thanks for that. Oh my god.
So there is a very good chance that different ceremonies were conducted very differently depending on, the family history and how, it was passed down from ancestors.
Yeah,
down
absolutely.
The family lineage.
Absolutely.
This is exciting, huh?
Sorry,
that is a replica.
Yeah, that's a Vendel replica.
Yeah.
Gorgeous glass.
That is
absolutely beautiful.
That is so pretty.
It's a Valsgard, I think. It might be Grave 6. I might just be pulling that out. I don't know. But it's definitely a Valsgard Vendel period Sweden, and it's gorgeous.
Yep.
So pretty. He has so many more beads in his face now.
I know, right?
He had like 2 or 3, but he's got so many now.
He's so glittery.
It's like the Viking. It's like the Viking sequins. Vikings did not have beard beads, by the way. As far as we know, they did not have beard beads. It's
that's more of a modern thing.
It's a modern invention. I'm not against them. I have beard beads because I think they look gorgeous. They look beautiful, but not a Viking thing. Sorry, guys.
Please promise me that this marriage will last. Otherwise, this feels kind of pointless from my perspective.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Marriage is for life.
Every day and every night.
Imagine that.
Yeah. Every morning when you wake up, I'll be there.
And every night when you go to bed,
I'll be there.
No, then I must ask you to double check because I'm absolutely certain that I'm actually inside of you.
No. Turn around. Then.
Oh my god.
Oh, it's so painful.
I have to ask you to double check. Turn around.
They're married.
Yay! They did it.
The fact that they used the slave is like a cake cutting.
I didn't even think of that.
You didn't notice
awesome.
that?
I didn't even think of it. I didn't even think of that comparison. That's so funny. Makes me want to get like a human-shaped cake for us.
Please no.
Marriage Blood Eagle.
No.
It's a red velvet cake. Oh, what do you know? But I also like that they didn't go like overboard with it. They didn't make it like the entire episode was like getting ready for the ceremony and then having the ceremony and all these like stupid, frivolous things that like have nothing to do with it. Like they pretty much stuck to just keeping it very simple and straightforward. Mm-hmm. And I love that. Like they hit all the nails essentially.
Yeah.
I dig it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
She didn't even wear the dress.
She didn't wear the dress. Fuck
she
that.
almost carried him over the threshold.
Pretty much. She carried him as far as she could bear to. It's like, I don't blame her for it. Because, my God. I can't wait to have more Bjorn in the show. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what happens to him, honestly.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a shame that he hasn't been used a ton more. And I guess that's just because they have other points to be making and stuff, so... I'm sure we'll see him, like, now that the wedding's out of the way, I'm sure we'll see him more now.
Yeah, I think the second half of this is going to be
Yeah.
the more Viking fighting.
Yep. Absolutely.
War stuff happening.
Absolutely.
Such a good show.
It's so good. I can't wait for, like, season 4 and season 5 and all the rest.
Season -1, season -2.
Just all the backstory. All the backstory. It's going to turn out to be like a Star Wars thing.
Thank you guys so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you can be notified of our future videos. And we will see you in the next one.